Morning, welcome to our thought for the day. I'd like to read a little verse from Matthew chapter 26, and it's verse 56. And it says this: all the disciples forsook him and fled. What sad words they are to read this morning. What frightening words they are. Oh, that God will never allow us to forsake him and flee from him, for he will never forsake you and he will never forsake me. And the simple heading I've given this morning is: don't be a deserter. Don't be a deserter. God help us never to desert the God who has given his all for you and for me. How sad these words are of our text this morning, and yet they were prophesied. They came as no surprise to Christ. This situation didn't come as any surprise to Christ. He knew that it was going to happen. He had already foretold that it was going to happen. And I'm glad to be able to say this morning, nothing takes Christ by surprise. He knew it would happen. And in these last days in which we live, God help us to be faithful to our Christ. You see, he never deserted them, but they cowardly, for fear of their own lives, fled from him at the very outset of his sufferings. This is a plain lesson to show, friends, us the frailty of believers. If left to themselves, they're but sheep, and they flee when the wolf appears. You notice that they'd all been warned of the danger and promised to die rather than to leave their master, but they were taken by sudden panic and they fled. It may be today that the promise Christ that is yours, the promise that Christ makes to you, the promise that you have made to Christ, you need to look afresh at them and make sure that you are keeping your side of the bargain. It may be that you promise Christ that you will face whatever the trial may be that comes your way, and you think that you can conquer. But I want to tell you, friends, that you cannot conquer anything in your own strength. You cannot conquer anything without Christ as your Saviour and your King. And so we must trust completely upon him and in him alone. It's one thing to promise, but another thing to perform. Help us to make us people who will perform the very promises that we make. It would have been, you see, today the eternal honour to have stood manfully and faithfully at the side of Jesus, but they fled. God help us from imitating them. God help us to be strong and to be courageous for Christ. For the Lord your God is with you, and he will never leave you. There is no safer place than by the Master, for he is well able to take care of you. He's able to call 12 legions of angels. You see, the mistake they made was that they ran from the place of true safety. Let us never forget that God can make the coward brave. For they were apostles who were as frightened as a mouse, but now they've become as bold as a lion. You see, after the Spirit of God came upon them, and the same Spirit that made them brave can do the same for you and me today. It's the very same Spirit. There is no difference. How sad the Saviour was. How sad the Saviour must have felt as he saw his friends so faithless and forsake him. God help us not to forsake him, not to crucify him afresh, and to put him for an open shame. God help us never to be ashamed of our Saviour, always to be amazed by him, and enable us never to be a deserter, but a true disciple, a true follower, and serve him with all our hearts, and follow him until he comes to take us to be with him, to receive our reward. God bless you all. I look forward to speaking with you again tomorrow morning.